Romeo and Juliet depicts two warring clans and the consequences of their feud, telling the story of the Protestant Reformation and the wars that resulted through metaphor. Baz Luhrmann wanted to release the language of the original text, bringing the hidden meanings behind the play to a modern audience, one that is less privy to the nuances of the political and social climate of Shakespeare's life. William Shakespeare has some of the most influential and lasting works of the English language. His most well-known work, Romeo and Juliet, was released in 1595, near the end of Queen Elizabeth I's reign. For nearly all of Shakespeare's life, Catholics were persecuted for their faith, forcing them to practice in secret. Shakespeare himself is suspected to have been a secret Catholic due to his wedding officiator being a Catholic and his family's religious background. Shakespeare's plays are often taken as veiled criticisms of his contemporary society, with comments on modern philosophy in King Lear, religious conflict in Hamlet, and the issue of uncertain monarchical succession in Julius Caesar. However, Shakespeare consistently explores these themes through metaphor in order to convey his messages to a popular audience and to avoid persecution for his beliefs. In Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann attempts to bring the metaphor of Protestants and Catholics to the forefront of the film, now that the implied messages of the original script would not bring persecution to its author. Luhrmann visually brings out the metaphor of the conflict between Protestants and Catholics through the use of religious iconography in each clan's costumes and the differences in how they are presented. The presence of both sects of Christianity are first revealed in the gas station scene.
Benvolio has a cross hanging from his gun, and Samson wears an image of Jesus on his shirt.
Abraham also wears a cross on his neck, and Tybalt wears an image of Jesus on his bulletproof vest. The common denominator between their costumes is religious imagery, establishing the similarity between the clans in that regard. Where they differ is in the presentation of those elements. The Capulets, Abraham and Tybalt, wear nearly formal clothes, with dark colors and restrained designs. They present themselves and their religious symbols in a traditional and formal way, mirroring the style of worship that the Catholic Church practiced. The dress of the Montagues contrasts with the Capulets by being informal and loose, with unbuttoned shirts billowing behind them and crosses dangling wildly from their wrist, which mirrors the style of worship that the Protestants practiced. Both clans are Christians, but devolve into violence and conflict despite this similarity, and it's because of how they choose to express that religion. Christian imagery is associated with every scene which ends in conflict and death as a result of the feud. The prologue features an intense religious chant behind scenes depicting and explaining the history of the Montague and Capulet struggle. The music suggests a connection between religion and the conflict between the families. The prologue also flashes images of a huge Cristo Redentor-esque statue of Jesus, the largest religious icon in the film. The statue is located in between the Montagues building and the Capulets building, linking this religious symbol with the conflict, as Jesus watches over the city, bearing witness to the families and their conflicts. Religion is a significant aspect of the mise-en-scène of the gas station scene, which is the first feudal conflict shown in the film, as discussed previously. Later, once the conflict starts to escalate, religious symbols return to appear in further scenes of death and conflict. Tybalt uses a pistol with an image of the Virgin Mary in the sweetheart grip to murder Mercutio, contradicting the symbolic value of purity that the Virgin Mary represents. Upon the film's return to the Jesus statue, Romeo uses Tybalt's pistol to murder him. Romeo takes a few seconds to contemplate his actions and screams,
"I am fucking full!"
Jesus is what Romeo forgot. Romeo betrayed the purity he had in Christ and murdered Tybalt before his eyes, losing his innocence. The final scene of Romeo and Juliet's deaths is also covered in religious symbols, with blue crosses lining the walkway to Juliet's resting place and images of saints and religious candles adorning the altar she lies on, further linking religious symbols with the conflict and its consequences. The nature of the feudal conflict is never outright said, but the heavy presence of religious iconography in scenes depicting the conflict guides the viewer to conclude that the conflict is either caused by or perpetuated by religious differences. From shot to shot, Baz Luhrmann injects religious iconography into the veins of the plot, making a statement about the historical feud between the Protestants and Catholics. Luhrmann controls the use of imagery in association with the original narrative to highlight the original intent behind the words, to make the movie in the way that Shakespeare might make a movie, revealing all that Shakespeare puts into his plays through the form of film, including the hidden messages about religious conflict. In Shakespeare's times, he could be punished or killed for his views on such conflicts, so he hid his messages behind metaphors, In modern times, those restrictions are no longer in place, so Baz Luhrmann and others can bring those hidden meanings out while preserving the original form of the play.